Now,
Right.
there are a few points to make when even pouring, because what we've got here is we've got effectively a number of little air cavities created by the
Yes.
leaves and the sticks and so on and so forth. I'm going to start pouring. Patience, once again, do it slowly, but also there's a couple of other things that we can consider, Peter.
That's it. Okay, now what you can do is lift that taller, that's the way, and keep the flow going. About that rate, yeah. And just patiently, a bit more, probably a bit, about, like a thin biro stream, a bit more. Yeah, and that's now flowing around between all the sticks, and it's actually pushing the air out. And as it's a thin stream, any little air bubbles that are coming from the reservoir of material, when they reach that airstream, they split open. So we're really getting just pure resin with virtually no air entering this system. Now, as it goes around, it'll just push out any other air. We can't guarantee you'll get every bubble out, but it's the best way you can go short of having what's called a vacuum chamber, which is sort of a sophisticated bit of gear that's not in the average garage.
That's right. Now, you'll also notice that I'm actually just pouring from the one spot. I'm not going around the rim, pouring from... So that's important, isn't it, Peter?
Yeah, you're avoiding that temptation to lace all over. That way you further entrap air. So what we're doing is just creating a wall of resin that's moving around through all of the fibres of material and pushing the air out.
And I'm just pausing there because it is actually coming over the rim there.
Yeah.
So I'm pouring a bit too quick at the moment. So I'll just pause for a little bit. Remember, patience, patience.
Yeah, put it down, have a rest the wrist for it's going to be a little while.
We have got a long working time here, so there's no panic. And I can see that we've got only about another 5 mil.
Yeah, so we're nearly there.
And we've got to pause again because we're overflowing again. But one thing that this resin does do, Peter, it's self-levels, doesn't it?
Oh, very much, absolutely, yes. This, this 606, just while we're waiting, is not only used just for this sort of mass casting, but you can see here it's flowing over the wood on the top. It's actually used for as a capping resin for entire tables. It has this ability to run to the edge of timber and pull up and have like a curved edge. It has what's called a lensing effect, and it gives a very 3D luxurious effect to any timber. So it's actually used on badge coating industrially as well, but for timber you can use that same process on large areas. So that's what we're seeing here, a really beautiful finish on top, about 1 millimetre deep.
Now I can see that now that this resin's almost up to the top of the rim on the other side. And what I'm going to do now, I've said only pour from one side, but what I do want to do is actually coat all of the tops of the leaves and sticks and gum nuts. So I am now going to go around the edge, right around the rim, and just giving all of those leaves a bit of a coating. Some of them I actually want to protrude above the resin, but if I give them a coating of resin, then they'll...
You get some below as well.
Yes.
Quite a nice deep look, yeah.
So that's all I'm going to do to finish off. I do like this project as a woodworking project because it doesn't use a lot of resin. As I said, we mixed up 600, we've perhaps got 200 left, so we've used 400 mil of resin in this project. And I reckon that, going back to my initial example, I reckon we get so much extra from the use of resin, so much extra added interest to this, that it's well worth using that resin to do this sort of thing. Now, we've filled up our mould here, our rim. We've still got some resin left over. We don't want to waste that resin. As I've mentioned in the past, having a second project ready to go is a good idea, and I can pour that leftover resin into this project. I haven't got enough to completely fill this project, but that doesn't matter because we also discussed before the idea of pouring more resin onto resin that has already been dried. The advantage of these rubber kitchen spatulas is that you can get almost absolutely every bit of resin in there. Now that brings us, Peter, to the next issue of cleaning up. What would I do with this? I've mentioned that I just let that go dry, but if you want it cleaned before...
Well, once it would have been years ago, putting an industrial solvent in there like xylene, epoxy thinners, acetone. It all does sort of clean the resin up, but it's not good for the lungs, etc. We find that a little bit of patients use methylated spirits. It does cut the material really well and clean it, but it takes a little bit longer, but you haven't got the issues of working with a volatile solvent. Another thing with the meths, just a little tip, I don't know if you're aware that if you put 5%, up to 5% methylated spirits in a lot of systems, they will epoxies, it will thin it greatly and make it migrate more into wood. So you can actually cut the viscosity of your resin using meths.
Now, what I tend to do is I tend to just leave that jug to dry with the resin in it, and then at some point I break it all away and it comes away from the jug nice and easily, so I don't do any cleaning up. I just leave it there. And that's it, folks.